It was my birthday, or at least that's what I thought it would be. A day meant for celebration, surprises, and laughter. I had spent the morning at work, anticipating a quiet evening at home with my wife Tanya, and maybe a small gathering of close friends later. I even picked up a bottle of her favorite wine, thinking it would pair perfectly with the dinner I had planned. When I arrived home, the house was unusually quiet. The front door creaked as I opened it, and the familiar smell of home greeted me. But something felt off. The air was heavy, tense. I walked into the living room expecting balloons, maybe a cake, maybe a playful surprise. Instead, I saw her, Tanya, standing in the middle of the room with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. In her hands was a sealed envelope. "Oh, happy birthday," she said, voice silky, teasing, almost mocking. I tilted my head, confused. "Thanks. Is that for me?" I asked, pointing to the envelope. She laughed. Not a light-hearted laugh, a full, deliberate laugh, one that carried amusement at someone else's expense. She tossed the envelope toward me. I caught it instinctively. My hands trembled slightly, and when I opened it, my heart sank. Divorce papers, signed, dated, final. "What? This?" I stammered, looking at her in disbelief. She laughed again, leaning casually against the doorframe. "I thought a gift would be too predictable, so I decided to give you something more memorable." Memorable. The word echoed in my mind as shock gave way to a strange, simmering anger. I wanted to yell. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to understand why she would humiliate me like this on my birthday. Before I could react, I noticed movement beside her. Quiet, subtle, almost invisible. Her sister Nisha had entered the room. Unlike Tanya, Nisha's demeanor was calm, composed, with an intensity that made you lean in without realizing it. Her eyes met mine briefly, and I felt an unspoken suggestion linger in the air. "You don't have to let this ruin you," Nisha whispered, almost under her breath, so Tanya wouldn't hear. "There's another path, if you want it." My mind raced. Another path? What did she mean? Betrayal and humiliation were my reality now, yet here was someone, her own sister, quietly offering guidance. Not judgment, not advice for revenge, but a chance. Tanya noticed the exchange and raised an eyebrow, but Nisha remained calm, poised, almost untouchable. I turned back to Tanya, who was still grinning, a smugness that made my stomach twist. You did this? On my birthday? You laughed?" "Yes," she said, unapologetic, casual. "I've wanted out for a while. Consider this my way of making it official." I nodded slowly, carefully. I kept my voice low. "I see." Her grin faltered slightly. She hadn't expected my calm. The simmering tension inside me was there, but I held it back deliberately. I looked at Nisha again. She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. A silent acknowledgement. A signal that I wasn't alone in navigating the aftermath of this betrayal. Over the next few weeks, the aftermath of the divorce began to unfold. Tanya tried everything: pleading, excuses, attempts to manipulate public perception, to make me appear unstable. But I stayed composed, quiet, strategic. I kept my dignity intact. Nisha, surprisingly, remained in the background. She didn't interfere directly, but her subtle guidance proved invaluable. She provided insight into Tanya's patterns, her manipulations, and even quietly warned me about attempts to sabotage my personal or professional life. One evening, months later, Tanya tried another game. She called, voice sweet, almost seductive. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply immediately. I thought of Nisha's quiet advice: patience, clarity, and control. I didn't need to react impulsively. When I finally responded, it was calm, deliberate. "We don't need to talk. The matter is resolved." Tanya's tone shifted instantly. She hadn't expected composure. She hadn't expected strength. That's when I realized the true gift wasn't the divorce papers. The real revelation was the clarity, the empowerment I discovered in the aftermath, and the unexpected guidance from Nisha. Weeks later, I began to rebuild. My career, my personal life, even my social circle, all carefully restored, strengthened by lessons learned from betrayal. And Nisha remained a subtle presence, a reminder that sometimes, even in the worst moments, unexpected allies can appear. Tanya, for all her calculated audacity, couldn't undo the growth I had achieved. Her attempt to humiliate me became the catalyst for my transformation. And the result surprised everyone, not just her, but anyone who knew the drama. I emerged stronger, more confident, and more self-aware than ever before. And Nisha? She quietly smiled once, seeing the aftermath of her quiet counsel unfold perfectly. Sometimes, the strongest influence is invisible, and the wisest guidance comes from those who speak softly when everyone else is shouting.